On this week's episode of the A2B podcast, I'm joined by Gearoid Buckley, Group Marketing Manager at LinkedIn. To say the least, Gearoid has had one hell of a career path in getting from A to B. Involved in countless activities during his time in CIT, Gearoid went on to become CIT's Student Union President for 2 years. He was also the Mayor of Bandon at one point, as well as a councillor. He's been a marketeer for 10 years now and is currently the Group Marketing Manager at LinkedIn. Hi Gearoid, how are you?
Hi, Jack. Thanks for having me on.
No worries at all. Happy to have you on. You're based in Dublin, Gearoid.
Yeah, based in Dublin. At the moment, based out of a spare bedroom. We moved house from the city centre in December. We were very, very lucky we did because where we were living was officially a shoebox.
Oh,
So very, very lucky and fortunate to be able to work from home with a spare bedroom.
that's very handy. And you're a group marketing manager at LinkedIn. How long have you had that role, Gearoid?
I suppose it feels like I've had a number of roles in LinkedIn, and they all kind of feel like it's all one role as such. Only
Mm.
it's changed over time and evolved over time. Officially, I'm in this role, I think, maybe 18 months, 2 years, and it's been very enjoyable, very exciting. So I currently manage a team of marketers, and we're responsible for the marketing of our LinkedIn's ad products across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So we're everything from online advertising, digital advertising, events, webinars, content marketing. So there's quite a lot in our scope, and it's exciting, definitely. And the interesting thing I mentioned about the role evolving, I think it's evolved a lot too because marketing is changing so fast at the moment that we're constantly updating what we're doing, and what we did 6 months ago, we're probably not doing anymore, which I think is a good thing. But it means you're always on your toes and you're always learning.
Okay, yeah, no, that's interesting, and I can definitely see where you're coming from. But I'd like to kind of, I suppose, um, let's wait before we get into how your role has evolved with LinkedIn. And I want to bring you back to the very start when you would have studied marketing in CIT. Um, Gerard, why did you pick marketing in CIT? What led you to decide to study that course?
Um, I suppose first of all, I wanted to do a marketing course, and I think I was probably in transition year, and I filled out one of those. I think it was called career directions. You know, you answer 100 questions and it tells you your ideal job. And my ideal job was marketing executive, 250K a year. I'm not sure if that is because it was the Celtic Tiger times or a mistake, but certainly I've
Morris.
always enjoyed marketing topics in school. I've always enjoyed too accounting and business studies in school, so it made sense, I suppose, in lots of ways. I would have always taken part in enterprise competitions or whatever in the school or run the school shop and that kind of thing. So it was natural enough for me. Um, I do remember Morris Murphy called to our school
Lovely.
to tell us about the yeah Morris. He called to our school to tell us about the studying business studies in CIT, and it went down very very well as always. He was very very engaging, but maybe couple of months later or a few months later, I was out for a few drinks in Clonakilty, and I met Morris in the Rasta Grill chip shop at the end of the night. And he brought it up with me afterwards. Actually, when I came to CIT, he raised it with me. But we had a big conversation that night about going to CIT and the benefits of it, and he sold me on it. So it was down as my number. I got offered business studies in CIT in the level 7 side, and business studies in UL on the level 8 side. And I think because of the conversation with Morris Murphy, I had chosen CIT.
Morris is one man for some man, all right. I think a lot of people are very fond of him, both those who are still in the
Mm.
course and who've left it years ago. So if Morris is listening now, I hope he's happy with that. What kind of modules stood to you, or what do you remember from the course? What did you enjoy? Was it a very? I'm not. Was it a very different course? I wonder to what we're doing now. Did you have placement, or did you have the live assignment?
We didn't have placement, no, and a lot of the subjects were less
Mm,
practical in the sense there was no digital marketing, there was no, I suppose, social media. It was mainly, I suppose, the core principles of business and the core principles of
Mm.
marketing. So I remember studying economics with Eric O'Brien, and I'm not sure if he still does it, but the analogy about the cups of coffee still sticks with me, and if people listening might recall that one as well. Yeah, I remember Morris Murphy was a great lecturer as well in terms of the. I had him for a couple of different subjects, but it was enjoyable and engaging. Um, I remember behavioral science as well. That was interesting because I think for a long time, and especially in business studies up until leaving cert, you're learning about matrices, techniques, and so on, but you never learn about human beings and the science behind behavior. So I enjoyed that one. I also I love the marketing stuff too. I remember we had a marketing module. I think Rosalie he taught it, but was it Marcoms? I can't recall the actual name, but it was really good. Again, very practical. Something I still use today. You know, like the four quadrant, whether it's a Boston matrix or whatever. I probably pull out a quadrant every single day, or if not, twice a day to map something out. So I think. While some things are very theory based, when you use them in the field or in real life, they're really useful.
You obviously used them in real life towards your final year. You had your own little company called Shootout.ie, am I correct?
Yeah, shootout.ie.
When was the last time you heard of that now?
It comes up every now and then. I get an email from the hosting side if we want to renew the domain. So we used to play soccer five-a-side in Bishopstown and in Ballincollig and so on, but there was no option for something similar in towns outside of the cities really as such. So a partner, a friend of mine, my best friend Dara, and myself, we created a kind of a competitor for Astro.ie, whereby we actually we're focused more on the towns around Cork. Our price point was a bit cheaper, and I suppose when we start launched it, first of all, we had success. But the problem was it was really difficult to scale.
Hmm.
A referee, for example, could call in sick or not turn up or something like that, and you're based in Cork, and the match is supposed to start 10 minutes ago in Mallow, and you have to resolve that issue. And I think both of us we weren't 100% committed to it because it was such a hands-on, draining project. But it was exciting. I learned a lot about it, especially about scalability. If we were to, it would work, but I think it needed someone to dedicate 100% of the time to it. And I don't think neither of us were passionate about it.
Am I right in saying you sold it when you went into your final year?
Yeah, so it's to Dara, my partner. He took it on,
Nice.
and so we I suppose if you think about it, we used to do it like seasons. So a season would last for maybe 3 or 4 months, and I think he got maybe 2 seasons or 3 seasons more out of the project after that.
That's it, Dara. Is he still with Shootout? Is he still
Well, he was my best man at my wedding, and I was at his best man at his wedding
okay?
last year. And he made a joke about how he still has uh, trophies in his attic at home from Shootout.ie because Gearoid, thinking he was very wise, bought in bulk, thinking the company would
Okay.
last for multiple years. No, it was
Brilliant.
enjoyable, and as a duo, we tried different things together before that too. We tried to open a bar in Croatia on the beach bar. Didn't
Nice.
really, it wasn't a practical thing to do at the time. So we've been trying different things over the years. So we're not, every now and then we do feel like we'd love to do something ourselves. But Dara now
Mm.
works in a tech company as well. And I think we're pretty, I won't say we're probably, we're enjoying what we're doing right now, but who knows what will happen in the future.
So I suppose you were involved with college. You're highly interested in what you were doing and the academia side of things, but you were also extremely involved in extracurricular activities. You were the member of multiple societies. You were the campaigns officer in your second year and the projects officer for your third year, and then you became the CIT Students Union president in 2008. Can I ask before we move on to, I suppose, your time as president, why were you so proactive in college? What was your drive? You were the member of the societies board, the entrepreneurial society, business and accounting society. Um, why were you getting involved in so many, you know, side activities?
Um, I don't, I don't think I have a simple answer for you there. I think it's a bit like Society's Day when you come in and you register for so many things that you're passionate about. I enjoyed it a lot of the time. In terms of the student union experience stuff, there's a bit you get a kick out of helping people, and very often students are faced with what are small problems, but for some students it's a big problem because it's their whole life or something's going on. And usually there's a very simple solution, and the student union don't have all the answers, but they normally do know who knows the answers. So when I was a class rep, we had a few. I was class rep in first year, and I remember we had some students who had some challenging times, and by just liaising with the student union president at the time, we were able to resolve these very, very easily and quickly because someone else in the college, like CIT has lots of resources for students, but very often students don't put their hand up to get these resources. So the student union plays a very good role as a conduit between the resources that are there and students that need things. So yeah, you get help. I think by helping people, I got a kick out of that, like on a personal level, definitely, selfishly. But it's also good to help people as well. And I think in terms of the society stuff, I remember going to a couple of lectures that were put on by the Business Society and in the theatre, Roy Gallagher Theatre, if I recall. I'm sure I hope it's still there.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But they were very, very good seminars that were run, and I just love that. So I think that I wanted to be the person organizing that. I wanted to be the person involved in that. Um, so yeah, definitely, probably something that I just I got more out of it than I probably gave into it, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And to your earlier point about me being a studious person, I think when you introduced the question, I think I was probably in college more than anyone else, but I should have been. I probably spent a lot less time in the classroom than I should have, which I regret now looking back. But we are where we are.
I can understand that. I think last year when I set up the marketing society, my attendance dropped big time. And then towards the end, I was pulled aside and I was like, look, it's all good and gold. You're bringing in, speakers and stuff and fair play, but, you're forgetting about the reason you're actually in college. And it was an eye opener for me to be like, you see people, entrepreneurs who are dealing with so many different
Mm.
tasks, but you can't let one drop. Like there has to be a consistency. Like you can't just forget about one thing. you know like I'm not paying the fees so I can go away and organize events. So I definitely know from my final year that attendance, even without being in college physically, whether I have to be on a Zoom call for a certain time, I have to pick that up again. You were the president of the Students Union for 2 years. Do you remember any of the kind of aims or goals or policies that you had? Any kind of big projects you worked on?
As you ask that question now, I can see my manifesto in my head. Um,
Go on.
Building a new library extension. I had lots of things on there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the big one at the time was college fees.
Okay.
Um, Pre 2008, the crash, the registration fee I think was €700 a year,
Wow.
and lots of people were exempt for other reasons, financial reasons. So
Sure.
it was, and the Fianna Fáil government at the time were faced with a crash that was happening, and they wanted to bring in college fees in some shape or form. And that was a big challenge for us because uh, we weren't used to protesting as a student body nationally. We had life was pretty good for a long time, so that was that was probably one of the main topics that we had to deal with as a student union. I remember we didn't have Zoom obviously, and we didn't have Skype and so on. Not in the mainstream workplace anyway, but we used to have to travel to Limerick or to Trinity or to UCD or to NUIG to have meetings with other student unions,
Mm.
and it took like every Saturday, or it took up a lot of time. So that was one thing that I enjoyed the challenge, definitely, but that was something that we had to deal with. Um, a number of other things too. I remember because it was the downturn. One thing that stands out in my mind, and my mind sometimes I question my own stance on it, but I remember at the time the president of the college, Brendan Murphy, he spent something like 30,000 euros on a portrait of himself for the the board of directors meeting room, which seemed like a lot of money at the time. It still is a lot of money, But in compared to CIT's overall budget of millions, it's not even a fraction of it. It's quite small. But I got worked up quite a lot about it because at the time, because of cutbacks, they were reducing the number of hours in the library because they couldn't staff it basically with the funds they had.
Mm,
Yet, 100 meters away, the president was having this 30K picture on his wall, for example. And that does I got worked up a lot about those things, and maybe looking back now, I wouldn't have been as worked up about them. But certainly, I feel that there was lots of things like that kind of came at us pretty hard during the time because there was cutbacks coming everywhere,
yeah.
and lots of challenges like that. I think a big challenge too was the students suddenly found it hard to get part-time jobs. Students suddenly found it hard to pay for life and so on. And it became less about union became less about the events that we're running and the parties and that kind of stuff, and more about actually welfare of the students and helping them and so on. And that was a big shift as well in my first year as student union president. So definitely felt it in that sense. And the college responded very well. At the college at the time did a probably in the space of 12 months change how they support the students quite a lot. They invested a lot more in frontline staff, helping people resolve issues that because they didn't need to do this before that. So it was a big change for the college as well.
I think that's definitely apparent in the college today. We have a welfare officer, Keane O'Driscoll. We've got the accessibility department. Like, there's the student fund system going on there. Um,
Mm,
so I think the work you may have started when the crash occurred, the impact is still there today. So fair play. It's not an easy thing to do, and especially because you would have graduated in 2008 and you stayed on for an extra 2 years as president.
yeah, but I will say that the staff are incredible. We have one of the things I enjoyed the most, and this is a weird thing to say, but and I'll tell you why I enjoyed it in a second. There's a committee called the Infringements Committee or Infringements Board.
Hmm.
And that board looks at anyone that cheats in an exam or cheats in a submission of a report or whatever, they can be reported to this infringements committee. And there's staff there from the academic council. So there's lecturers on it, there's a student on it as well, in the case I was the student, for example.
Okay.
And I enjoyed it in the sense that we were able to help students straight away. So the student would come in, make their case on why they cheated. And most of the time there's a genuine reason why this person cheated in an exam. It's because they stayed up late or they couldn't or just very stressed about something else in their life. But it was interesting that people would go to so much lengths to actually cheat. They'd rewrite the book on the back of a calculator or something like that.
Mm.
And if they put half the amount of work into actually reading the textbook, they would need to do this in the first place. But people, when they're stressed, they do crazy things. But the part I liked about this committee, especially, was that within an hour, the student knew what their fate was and such. And most of the time, the college was very lenient. If you cheated and there's genuine reason for it, you may have to skip an exam cycle or whatever. But there was always a there was never a case, no matter how bad things were, the college was out to get anyone,
Okay.
and the college always tried to put the students' mindset and their thoughts in the front of the decision being made. And I thought that was a good thing because other projects you're working on, I mentioned the fees, I mentioned like other things like that. They're long-term things, and any one person, whether it's in the student union presidency or any role, you may not see the impact for that for a long time. Whereas in this hour, you have a chance to help a student and you get a resolve for them, and that felt pretty good.
That's wonderful. I think currently there's a big fear factor put onto cheating. It's kind of a just don't do it.
Mm.
So if there are any students listening and you're thinking of cheating, lads, try not to do it. The infringement committee, that's handy, but don't think you get off lightly.
Oh, and just to be clear, like lightly is like you have to skip, like you can't graduate for a year or whatever. I'm not saying by any means uh, is it a free pass.
Mm, yeah, no, that's that's an interesting one. I think I think I might have cheated an exam in secondary school once or twice. But when it comes to college, I would be terrified to do it.
Mm,
I think when we were doing our leaving cert, there was I think this is true, but because it was a state exam, it's like if you were caught cheating, you wouldn't be able to do your theory test or your driving test for like 3 years you wouldn't be allowed to do it. So I made sure not to cheat. And I'm 21 now, and I've still yet to get my theory test done or anything like that. So I probably could have cheated, but yeah, no, I think I just didn't really want to face the consequences.
I think it's changed a lot too in the sense that like pre the modularization, like we used to have a process whereby you do one exam at Christmas time. It may or may
Mm.
not contribute to your end of year result, and you do one exam in summer. And summer exam normally accounted for 100% of your whole year subject. So whereas now, if you're doing a summer test and you have all the pre-work, continuous assessment and so on, you know, the summer result may not be worth a lot anyway in terms of the actual overall result.
I think college exams have changed big time.
Mm,
I'm not too sure what the system was like, but I've got a very close friend, and he would have dropped out of college, I think, in 2009, 2010, possibly. Definitely about 10 years ago, anyway. Um, and his reasoning for it was because the way exams were done was just ridiculous, and he was saying like that we've no idea how easy we have it now. I don't know if I'd say it's easier, but I suppose it is for the student, but it's a lot more manageable, and it's fair on the college
mm,
system, the fact that each kind of topic is um, given in a specific module. But even at that, like I think from a learning aspect, I couldn't imagine being, sitting in an exam and just not having a kind of a way to predict what's going to come up for each paper, that it's just kind of all fired in there. It seems like hell. I don't know what college would have been like back when you were sitting exams, but I don't think I would have liked it. I don't think anybody in college now who's gotten used to
mm.
the fact that exams are modularized, especially from the way the leaving cert is, you have a subject, you sit the paper for that subject, and it's kind of the same for college now.
Yeah,
So I definitely wouldn't have liked that.
100% agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So your second year of presidency, which would have been 2009. When I say presidency, is that a big word? I feel like that's like I'm talking to the actual president of the country, but I suppose you would call it
I'm
presidency.
not complaining. Yeah, I suppose it is a word you would use.
Yeah. Well, we'll say your second term as Students Union president. You also became the mayor of Bandon.
Yeah, that all happened extremely fast.
Yeah, like what was this? And you were also in the council for a bit after that. Can you take me through? I suppose your rise in politics, girl. I
Rise and fall. Uh,
mean,
Fast rise and fast fall. Yeah, it's pretty crazy time because at the time we were, as I kind of said earlier, talked about the fees, the fighting the fees crisis, and we had a few protests around the country and so on. And I suppose I had been on a bit of local media like the Evening Echo, 96 FM, 103 FM, Red FM, etc. A bit every now and then about the fees or about like CIT stuff in general. So I had a bit of a profile um, in Bandon because it would be close to Cork and we listen to the same media and so on. And a couple of parties asked me to run for election that
huh,
year because the local elections only occur every 5 years. So 2009 was that election, and yeah, I declined them actually. And then maybe a couple of weeks later, the Labour Party came out very strong against the introduction of third level fees, and the Labour Party were actually the party that abolished fees back in the 90s. So it
okay,
kind of made a natural fit for me to. I remember Alan Kelly actually. He was running for election himself as an MEP, and he called to see me in CIT because I think we had a demonstration that day, and he came to support it. A number of other people came as well, and other parties and so on. Um, and we had a conversation, and he kind of said, "Look, this is an opportunity for you to fight fees from the inside per se, from the political spectrum." And yeah, what turned out to be uh, a political move, I suppose, ever for to fight fees at a different platform became a passionate love for my hometown, and in a really weird way. Um, like I had always worked in every weekend. I worked in my hometown and in a pub and in a shop during the day. So I didn't know how many people I actually knew, but canvassing door to door, it was really interesting because you actually know people and you've interacted with them in your town before. So it's not like I was really surprised at how passionate I got into about Bandon and the problems we had and the issues we had. And within a couple of days canvassing, my manifesto became like an encyclopedia. I wanted to change the world. And it's
Mm,
funny because my family would not be political at all. Like not even they probably vote for different parties every time, no allegiance whatsoever. And this, just to clarify, I'm no longer a member of the Labour Party either. I'm not a member of a party anymore. But um, I remember my mother promised me, she told me she'd buy me a new car if I don't run for election. Because I told her I was thinking of running. And
okay.
the I told her I'm going to run. And I suppose at the time I was probably a bit bullish. So that even made me run even more for election.
Yeah.
So the first night out canvassing, uh, I remember talking to my mom at the kitchen table, and she was like, "Don't do it, don't do it." And I walked across the road.
Why why didn't she want you to do Gearoid?
Um, I suppose my mother would be traditional in the sense that we weren't a political family.
Mm,
My mother was afraid that we would make a fool. I'd make a fool of myself, that I might come back
yeah.
with 10 votes or something like that. And I think she was doing it from my own. Like she's seen, it's it's probably a lot worse now, but politicians have a very tough life, and it's not a life that she wanted for me. So, but the funny thing was, like, I was knocking on my first door across the road from my house, and my mother was standing behind me, and she came to every door in between Bandon and Kinsale for
Ah,
the
fair play.
whole campaign. So I think I learned a lot about man there, but and myself. But that's how it happened as such. It kind of I fell into it a bit, and then because I was like, only 22, I think at the time, the media kind
Yeah.
of also kind of focused on me as a candidate did as well. So I was very fortunate to get some kind of good spots in the media in the run up to the campaign. And yeah, we topped the poll. So my mother's fear of actually me making a fool of myself was not the case in real life. And
No.
I think people saw a young person who was passionate, who had some crazy ideas, but wanted to do something. I think there was no history, no baggage. I think that appealed to people. So yeah, worked out pretty well.
What kind of problems did Bandon have in 2009? I mean, what kind of what were you up against? What were you trying to improve?
We had obviously the everything from the recession. A lot of people I called had no jobs, no work, the whole macroeconomic stuff. And
Mm,
while the town councillor and our county councillor has very little impact on fixing the macroeconomic welfare of the country, it's a talking point at every door. So most of the time you're talking to people about one of three things. The first thing is the macroeconomic stuff. Second thing is the pothole outside their door, and the third thing probably is local issues. But the local issues were the ones I felt I always had to bring up. So you talk to people maybe for 5 or 10 minutes. They'll say their piece about the country, it's in the state, etc. Then they'll talk about, let's show you this pothole around the corner. And then you have to bring up, well, we need a swimming pool for Bandon, or we need
yeah.
a cinema that is for Bandon. And we had some, at the time, there was actually a swimming pool. I think it's still there actually in Baltimore, and it's a community-based swimming pool whereby X number of people in the community sign up to it every year, which guarantees it's going to break even. So
Yeah.
then it's open for the whole. It's a community swimming pool and a community model. So we looked at doing something similar as well for the cinema, for the swimming pool. So my ideas were not as crazy as people, I suppose, I thought maybe. I'm not going to come in and open a cinema with 10 screens. It's more like, let's get a community cinema going first and see how we get on from there. But yeah, there's lots of issues like that. Obviously, amenities for teenagers was a problem as well. When I grew up, we used to have teenage discos. They weren't there anymore for multiple reasons. Over time, they kind of died out. The playground needed upgrading. Lots of things like that. And even since then, obviously, the big ones are like the flooding was a big issue. In my first year as mayor, the town flooded, and it was the worst flooding that's ever happened in the town. Most of the main street and the side streets were underwater for several hours, and it cost millions of euros damage.
Wow.
And yeah, I remember standing on top of a bin on the main street, and it was kind of a town meeting. Our phones weren't working because the mast had. at the bottom of the mast there's technology and it flooded as well. So
Jesus.
we had to kind of tell people the word of mouth. The mayor's going to make a speech at 12 o'clock, whatever, outside the library, and I was on top of a bin shouting out what
What?
time the council is going to come to take things away or whatever. It was, and we had very little knowledge too because I was going home to check my email on my laptop and then driving back downtown again to actually communicate what was being said. So it was pretty horrendous time, but the town bounced back, and it's had floods since then. And I know it flooded again recently in August, but I think there's work being done now, and it's the work that with council at the time that we worked on to get funding for to actually get designs created for the town, the new town, or the new works that we're doing, the storage work and the flood relief work. That's now being implemented, so it does take a long time. And obviously, there's been a number of ministers have come to town over the last 10 years sharing news about these. Oh, we're digging a hole for to, to satellite the storage work, the drainage work, and so on. But I hope it gets done now because it's badly needed.
Gearoid, you finished your term as mayor of Bandon in
Mm.
2010, and then you began your career. But what I'd like to know is, had you always plans to, with your degree in marketing, to go into a marketing position? Because for a 22-year-old, you had done quite a lot of work, both in, CIT during your time as president, but even as I suppose, a politician in your local town. How come you didn't take the politics further? And had you any plans to do that?
My mindset was always on, I suppose, building my career in marketing. Even if you go back to like the student union days, or even the society working in the business, for example, the business society, you're organizing an event. You have to market that event to get people there. You first of all need to know what event is needed. So there's a lot like everything I've done, I think, up to that point is marketing as well,
Creating awareness.
especially in politics. 100%. And even in politics as well, like you're talking to people in your community, you're finding a need or a niche,
Hmm.
and you're trying to help them fix it or fix it for them or fix it with them. And that's that's marketing, I think. And on one level, one thing I liked about politics was when you're handing out flyers for Councillor Gearoid Buckley, or you're updating your website and so on, it's pretty enjoyable because you're doing all this because you're the product,
Hmm.
and you all can also be 100% sure that the product you're marketing is a product you approve as such. So in that sense, I think they're very linked and very similar. But yeah, always marketing, plan to go into marketing. I did run for the party convention in 2011 to be a Dáil
Wow.
candidate, and I didn't get it. But I do think I dodged a bullet there. Um, Likewise, I had a big plan to get these cottage industries and co-ops all over West Cork to develop wind and wave energy. Big plans. But I think for my own health and sanity, I definitely dodged a bullet there by not getting that nomination.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because I'm a selfish person naturally. I feel like I can be, but I couldn't imagine, politics. I don't know if it's in me. I enjoy being given a problem and finding a solution, but at
Mm.
the end of the day, I like monetizing the solution as well. Now, in saying that, I can only say fair play and well done on, I suppose, 3 years, and because you even stayed on as a counselor for a number of years afterwards with Bandon, so fair play on that. Like, huge kudos and respect to you.
Yeah, well, it's a 5-year term, in the sense that I was the councillors that are elected on year one elect the
Mm,
mayor. So because I topped the poll, the other councillors uh, elected me as the mayor for the first year. I'm very thankful to them for that and for the experience. But yeah, I think at the end of my term, I was tired is probably the wrong word because I did enjoy it still.
mm,
But it's like if you go to the pub or you go to the shop or you're filling your car with petrol, someone will come over to you, or they'll follow you to the bathroom in the pub and ask you a question.
very good.
Like you'd come home from the pub, and instead of having lots of receipts from the bills of drink you purchased, you've had people's numbers, PPS numbers in your pocket because they've given to you the night before in the pub.
Jesus.
And I find it really hard to escape from. You're always
Yeah, there's
on,
no balance.
and I found that. there's no balance, yeah, and you end up having to talking to some people, and there's another, I can't give his name now, but he was a mayor of, I think, Leak Slip 20, 30 years ago. But he gave me advice that to go if you want to enjoy a night out, you have to leave your hometown. And when that's the time you have to, if you're a councillor representing people in your town and you can't enjoy a night out in your own town, that's not a good sign. So I think I didn't get that far now. I always enjoyed my nights out in Bandon, but I will say that it is
Mm.
always on.
Just as you said, you dodged a bullet. So
I think so, and I genuinely like. I love marketing. I love what I do. And every marketing role I've had, even in Cadbury Plastics, was I really enjoyed it.
yeah. So what exactly was Carberry Plastics?
Cadbury Plastics was it still is a fantastic company in West Cork. They manufacture
Mm.
oil tanks, plastic oil tanks, and like road. Any if you're driving anywhere in Ireland, you'll see red and white road barriers during construction. They
Oh,
create those as
really?
well, and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's pretty amazing. Like here, if you drive around Dublin at the moment, you'll see Cadbury Plastics recycle banks, for your
Sure.
cans and your
Yeah.
bottles. They're everywhere. So it's pretty cool in one sense that I remember as well. I was in Poland a few years ago and I saw a Cadbury Plastics bin, like recycle bin as well. So it's pretty cool seeing a company like that in West Cork all over Europe and Ireland. It's pretty good to see it
And
in real
had they
life.
that, I suppose, international reach when you joined them in 2010? Was that a thing for them at the time?
It was a thing at the time, but it wasn't probably as because they benefited a lot from the
Mm.
Celtic Tiger, whereby they were like they did a lot of stuff for the construction sector. So when I joined the company, that had just kind of I think I was hired to kind of combat some of the product need fit they were
Mm.
prices they were having because they had pivoted away from building oil tanks to building road barriers, doing every minute road barrier after road barrier, and they needed to rebuild up the business again. And the core business was oil tanks. So that's where we focused on. We focused a lot in the UK market as well. And it's interesting because you learn a lot in college about having superior products versus inferior products and price and demand and so on. But I got to experience that at firsthand because we couldn't compete with price. So you're all the time leading with the quality messaging, and that was kind of it was challenging, but it's also a really good ground for learning about marketing 101 because it's very easy to get into the price
Mm.
war. And the CEO, the managing director, Michael McCarthy, wasn't prepared to do that. He was confident enough in his product, and now the company I think is doing pretty well.
What kind of channels did you use? I would assume it was mostly B2B. So was it a lot of email
Mm.
marketing or cold calling?
It's a bit of both. So like when you think about the oil tanks, the people ordering oil tanks, they're in behind, they're in Cork Builder Providers, for example, the guy behind the counter. Someone comes in looking for an oil tank and there's no stock in the yard. He then picks up a phone call to call Cadbury Plastics. So, and back then as well, email wasn't probably big for retail, or it was very hard. You could email, say, info at Cork Builder Providers, but you couldn't email Paddy, the decision maker, if that makes sense. So we did email, yeah. We did a lot of direct mail as well. So we target the decision maker in the shop or in the oil company and say, here's a new product we have or an offer and so on. And that's how we kind of did it. We also had a direct field sales team as well. So we had guys going from shop to shop every day around Ireland. And that was probably the majority of where the sales came from. And we also did a bit of building demand as well. So we used to go to shows, whether it's agricultural shows to showcase our stuff to farmers and so on, or even the home build shows, in the RDS and those kind of places, whereby trying to get people to, so when they go into a shop, they request a Carby plastic oil tank because it's the best oil tank you can
Of
get,
course.
as opposed to just going with the one in stock. And that worked out as well. But I think it was always a tricky balance to have because at the end of the day, at the time, we sold through retailers, and they were the key decision makers, were the key person
Yeah.
back then.
You spent a year with Carberry Plastics, and then you joined another
Mm.
uh, company in Clonakilty, a bit different, and web conferencing
Yeah,
software.
it was incredible. They were probably
3 years with them, were you? Yeah.
uh, yeah, three and a half, 3 years. The company is about 200 meters away from the plastic oil tank manufacturing company, and it's pretty incredible. My commute was shortened by about 3 or 4 minutes, which is
Very
good.
handy.
But no, I remember my like the opportunities I will say are incredible. Like my first day in PGI, I was asked to take on a project with launch a new product, Global Meat, and it's still going strong. It's their leading product still. But I remember creating designing assets to go like the brochure and so on to launch
Nice.
it, and that's pretty incredible. Like uh, to go from working characteristics to go into PGI and this global brand. But the work I was doing was very similar. It's just the audience is slightly a bit different,
Mm.
which I thought was interesting in the sense that if you're getting marketing experience anywhere in the world or any kind of size company, it's transferable into other companies as well. So I wouldn't say to anyone not to say no to working experience in marketing because it is transferable.
Yeah, no, at the end of the day, you have a product, be it a plastic tank or communication software.
Mm,
You're trying to raise awareness for that product. You're trying to create demand from, potential customers, and once you've sold that, then you're trying to manage relationships with those. So whether it's Patty who's in, some DIY store or some, home build store, whatever it might be, or it could be John who's in an office and, is looking to do online conferencing with his team, whatever it might be. I think those
mm,
skills are still quite transferable. I
100%.
suppose.
Actually, a funny story about my first day in
Mm.
PGI. If you want a bit of humor, the I remember I was told to do an Awake to Dead campaign.
Awake to dead.
Now,
Explain that. Yeah.
Awake to Dead campaign. So the idea was that we'd launch a campaign targeting uh, customers that hadn't been using the product and encouraging them to use it. So the idea was if they use it, then and they get benefit from it, they will keep using it and they'll resubscribe for next year. Whereas if you're not going to use a product, you'd probably not subscribe again next year. So I well, no problem. I got an email list of a few thousand folks, and then I also I wrote the email. My manager said that's fine. No, she said we need to create another email. Um, I need to make it fun. So I got a designer on the phone and we got like a zombie apocalypse kind of
Brilliant.
imagery and Awake to Dead written in blood across the top of the email. So I sent the email out anyway, and that evening, my manager asked my manager, "That's the job done now," and she was very happy. And she said, "Are you going to send the internal email out now as well to let people know you did that campaign?" But of course, the email she said she wanted for the internal one was the one with the zombie apocalypse, Wake the Dead stuff on it. So I had sent um, I had sent the internal email out to external the team of it, but it worked very. Yeah, I think it actually was our best performing Wake the Dead campaign because it was a
Okay.
bit different. I don't think customers really understood the correlation between the header on the email and the copy, but yeah,
Fair play.
it worked well. A good first day.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think even if you had accidentally done something new that had caught people's attention, it still worked out. Obviously, so you still drew
Mm,
attention, and so fair play on that. You started off as a marketing executive. You then became the communications manager for Canada and India.
mm.
Um, what was that like? I suppose from selling plastic tanks in Clonagilty to then selling software to people in Canada and India. Like, was that overwhelming at the start?
I think it was a bit of mixture of experience. So one of the good things about working with carbon plastics is I'd very often pick up the phone and I'd talk to the customer because they would ring in an order, or I'd call them to clarify something. So it was always really good to get their feedback directly from the customer. With PGI, it was a bit different, certainly, because you had to actually, it's more of a macro marketing environment, and everything we did was at scale as such. Um, so I was a bit further away from the customers themselves, and if I was in the role again, I probably would insist on picking up the phone and talking to the customer. And LinkedIn, we do that quite a lot, and I find it really beneficial. In the role of comms manager, communication manager, we used to run an event called the Customer Forum, whereby we would bring our top customers every year to Clonakilty, and we'd inform them about our product roadmap. Um, hear their problems, and then head, we can use their feedback then for next year's products basically, or next year's roadmap. And that worked really well. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed talking to customers. Um, yeah, definitely that was a big difference in the experience of being further away from the actual business, if that makes sense, where the deals being made. Um, yeah, I think that was a big difference. The other difference too was just the scale of the company. I think PGI had like 100 sales reps, whereas Carberry had three, and a lot of the effort of the marketing team was internal communication. So I think in Carberry Plastics, people probably thought, "What's that guy do? What is he doing? What does that guy do in the corner? He comes in and he goes home, but because no one ever sees the external stuff." And in PGI, they do a really good job at bringing the whole company with them. So if we're launching a new campaign or any kind of campaign, for example, the whole company is informed about it in advance and told the results of it, which means that everyone knows what you're doing, but they can also help give you feedback and help you out as well. So I think that's definitely something I've learned from PGI that I brought with me to today even as well. If especially in companies like in SaaS-based companies or tech companies or even customer companies where there's a large customer base on there, like you could be talking to customers and communicating with them and engaging with them every single day, but unless you tell people internally, no one knows that and no one appreciates it. So I think definitely uh, there's a bit of marketing yourself internally and what your team does is as important as marketing the company you're marketing for.
That would I suppose concern employee engagement, making sure everyone's aware of what's going on, kind of letting them know that this is a team effort, even though this is a project you might not have directly worked on, you still have had some contribution to it.
Yeah, 100%. And even so, like I think we've recently launched a new brand campaign. Our brand team are fantastic in Dublin and LinkedIn, and they've recently launched a campaign. And when people see it, the ads and the videos and so on, people get excited about it too. So it's almost you're sometimes marketing the company to internal stakeholders as well.
The opportunity to work with LinkedIn arose, and you'd spend so much time working in and with the people of Cork, and you're obviously quite fond of
Mm.
Bandon and surrounding areas. How did you feel about making that move up to Dublin? Did you get a lot of slack from people? I mean, was it difficult? Because I'm not from Cork originally, and
Mm.
what I've kind of learned, and I think everyone's aware of this, Cork people are probably the most proud people in the country, and I have like I don't question it, because like why wouldn't you be? You know, I
Mm.
love Cork. Um, but how did you feel having to leave Cork behind and move up to Dublin when much of your career was in
Yeah,
Cork?
I suppose it was a short-term move originally. I'd come to my term. I think it was June was my counselor term had come to an end,
Mm,
and I was kind of thinking, look, all my friends had been to Australia, America, Canada, and I hadn't traveled. I suppose because I was so involved in the community as well. Like it's not a case you can turn away and I needed a break, I suppose, and I couldn't just turn off a switch. So I think
mm.
I said I'd move to LinkedIn. There's a job there. It's a 6 9 month maternity cover. I'll do that and then come back and try and get something in Cork. And that was my plan at the time. And yeah, I packed the bags, got an Airbnb for a couple of nights, found somewhere to live, and yeah, it kind of happened pretty fast actually. Because I think, when you're in the interview process, it can suddenly a job offer comes and you have a month's notice, and suddenly it's time to move. So yeah, it happened pretty fast, and I have to say, I do miss Cork, especially when you drive in, visiting. There's never enough
Mm.
time there. I think over the last maybe 3 or 4 years, especially, there's definitely a vibe back in Cork that was probably missing for a few years before that. Restaurants, the bar scene, everything's is pretty good right now there. So yeah, I'm a bit envious of it.
I think I might be biased in saying this, but I'm from Limerick originally, and I think the sense of community in Cork is, you can't compare it to any other city. in the country.
Mm.
I think especially with like local business, and maybe it's because I'm following, I suppose specific pages on Instagram and Twitter or whatever. But just I've never seen it before, especially Princess Street right now with all of the outdoor seating. But like you just, it's just constantly. I feel like Cork is really the heart of the country at the moment. Now, people elsewhere could listen to this now and be thinking, "Geez, what's this gobshite on about?" But yeah, you just
Yeah,
can't beat
yeah.
Cork.
And one thing I love about Cork, well, one of many things is you will, if you go, you walk down Patrick Street, you'll definitely meet someone you know, which I think is
Oh yeah.
pretty amazing. Um, yeah, and it's funny because I work for an American company and I have colleagues in Sydney, Singapore, New York, San Francisco, Dublin, and they'll make Cork jokes every week. Because I've been on about Cork for so long that they all like Cork comes up at least once a day for me in some conversation, and I don't bring it up. So
Oh really?
everyone knows how passionate I am about Cork. It's not that's never in question. Mm.
That's wonderful to hear. I don't blame you. My last 3 years here have been absolutely just amazing. And that's been made by the people of Cork, and Cork itself. It's a wonderful community. You started as a digital
Mm.
marketing communications manager. And you worked your way up, and you became online marketing manager, and then you were also senior demand generation manager. I'd like to hear just briefly what those three roles entail.
Yeah, so as I kind of said at the start, it's kind of the role I had originally has evolved over time as opposed to net new roles.
Oh, so it's kind of been the same responsibilities as some things added on, has it?
Kind of. I got a bit like that, yeah, certainly. So the original role I was covering for um, a person on maternity leave,
Hmm.
and during that time, the 9 months that I was there, the business saw huge growth. So at the time, we were a four-person marketing team, but there was opportunities to do more things and more budget came about and so on. So I was started to do a lot more online advertising, developing the website, etc. Um, and before that, or because we were such a small team across Europe, our plan was to just kind of build some content, build awareness that you can advertise on LinkedIn,
Hmm.
because there was a brand perception out there that LinkedIn is where you get a job or it's for HR. It's not for marketers. So we spent a lot of time in my first 6 9 months just building content around, did you know you can advertise on LinkedIn? Here's how to do it. Here's examples of best practice and so on. And we worked very closely with the sales team to get that out to customers. And then we ran some events as well to showcase that kind of content as well. And then we started to do more online marketing, which was net new for the team, I suppose. And I done something in PGI. So that was working very well also. And then when my time came to an end after 9 months, and Jane came back, who I was covering for, the company said, "Well, this is working well. What if we give you more budget and actually hire you? What can you do for online marketing?" And that kind of, yeah, I said, "I'll give it a go." So then we launched new websites across Europe. We invested more in online marketing, um, and kept increasing our budget year over year significantly. So that role evolved, I suppose, as well in that sense. Um, and then I was still kind of in touch with the content side of things as well. So we're a partner with Jane. Jane, for example, would create the content now, and then I'd bring it to life and the channels basically. And then got a bigger sales team. We needed more leads for that sales team. So then I became was demand generation marketing manager, whereby we were actually generating leads for that team at a much more scalable way. So I suppose I was heavily more investing in the content side, but also as well on more traditional events. If you say email is traditional, then email as well. Um, Even direct mail campaigns. So we did a lot, trying different things to generate leads for the sales team. And then that team has grown over the last couple of years, and I manage that team, the demand generation team for EMEA.
That's class. I think your career has been an extremely interesting one, Gearoid. From someone who would have started out and involved in a lot of politics at the start of it, and then I suppose you've been lucky in the sense, you know, you became marketing manager at Carberry, and then you got into SaaS, and then you got into LinkedIn. You've been with LinkedIn for such a long time now. And the work you're doing now seems to have a very kind of strong impact. Like you're dealing with some extremely important stuff, you know. Like just, you know, for a final year student, um, you seem to have a lot in your plate, but you also seem to be dealing with it very well. So that is class to see. Can I ask, from college to local government and now marketing, like what's your drive? What keeps you? What keeps? What's you know what motivates you?
Selfishly, I enjoy marketing. I enjoy what I do. I love challenging. Like when your numbers aren't going well, it's an exciting challenge to get them back up again, pacing well.
Mm.
It's rarely the case though. No, I love a challenge and I enjoy marketing. It keeps evolving. And to your question, your point just there about people in final year college now, it's not about where you come from. I think it's about what you do. Um, we interview a lot of candidates for marketing jobs, and it doesn't stand out to me that you've worked in Dell or Google or Facebook. It stands out to me as what you did in those companies or what you did in your other companies and so on. And I think like stuff like this podcast, Jack, says a lot about you as a person and your first of all your skill set. Like if you think about it, I could interview someone for a job on LinkedIn to run podcasts, but they may be already working in Facebook or Google and working with an agency to run podcasts. So the fact that you can do it yourself is pretty impressive. And I think it's not you don't need to wait for the opportunity. You can just grab it with both hands and do it. I think going back to the question earlier about politics versus marketing, like I had to create my own website, I had to do lots of those kind of things, creating my own collateral, printing lots of stuff. So yeah, it's kind of like it's about what you do with your rather than actually who you're working for at the moment.
I Thanks for those very kind words, Grod. I appreciate that.
If you want to change the name of the podcast to shooto.e, I can give you a good deal on the
You see, you're
domain.
still getting those emails, aren't you? I might do that. So
Yeah.
I don't know the shootout podcast though. That seems like a different audience that I'd be going for. You know, I have a friend who did criminology in college, and she's looking to start her own podcast. So I might put her in touch
Mm.
with you.
That'd be funny
Fair
though.
enough. Great. Gerard, before we finish up, I'm going to bring us on to the rapid questions. So are you ready?
I am ready.
What's your favorite book of all time?
Crony and the Customer by the late Fergus Quinn.
What app on your phone do you use the most?
Probably Outlook or Teams for work-wise. And then probably journal.e for news. I have the Football Manager app as well. That takes up a lot of hours.
Dublin or Cork?
Cork.
Barry's or Lions?
Barry's.
Instagram or Twitter?
Instagram.
Instagram or LinkedIn?
LinkedIn.
When a distant or older family member asks you what do you work as, what do you tell them?
I try to explain it. I can give you a funny story actually if you have a second.
Go on.
Um, we have a thing in LinkedIn a day every year called Bring Your Parents to Work Day. And I
Oh.
brought my mum in one day, my father, and they had got a 2 hour presentation from the head of LinkedIn Ireland about LinkedIn, what it is, what we do in Dublin, and so on. And then we went for a kind of into the coffee area afterwards, and they had a rock your profile station for parents could help with their profiles. And there had been no one there for a while, so the screen was on, the Control Alt Delete screen, the lock screen on the laptop.
Mm.
And my mother pointed to the screen and said, "Is that LinkedIn?" So yeah,
That's great. Are we going to see you in the doll at some point soon?
no, no.
If you could tell your younger self something, what would it be?
Uh, do less and aim for the big bets rather than the small stuff.
How would you define success?
If you're happy, I think. But if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have given you a different answer. No, I think once you're happy in life, that's number one thing.
Yeah, I think right now, at where I am in my life, I could give you the different answer that you could have given 10 years ago. Would you rather work from home or work in the office?
If I had to pick between both, I'd say home, but a mixture would be the ideal thing
Hmm. When are you most productive?
in the morning.
Describe your perfect Sunday.
Go to the gym in the morning, go for a run, meet friends for brunch, relaxing evening at home, getting ready for the week. Nothing too crazy.
What's a mistake that you've learned from?
I think it's just the question, the opposite to what I said earlier about advice I give myself is sometimes I still do today. I take too much on, and then I lose sight of the big project or the big win that's possible. So I think uh, going for fewer things done better is key.
What's the best piece of career advice you've ever been given?
If you don't showcase what you and your team are doing and invest time in like marketing what you're doing internally in your company, whether it's no matter how big or how small your company is, you may as well not be doing it in some respects. Because the bigger the company you work for, you could be selling 100 cars a week, but if the owner of the car company doesn't know that, or isn't told that, or doesn't see it in a newsletter, they're not going to know that. So I think invest in yourself, marketing wise, within your own opportunity, jobs and roles as well.
Gearoid, that's a wrap. I'd like to thank you very much for coming on to today's episode, and hopefully I'll see you again sometime in Cork.
I look forward to it. We'll go to Princess Street and have a nice pint outside.
Pizza and a pint.
Yes.
I'll hold you to it.
We might not need to have the pizza anymore. Fingers crossed.
I'll hold you to it. Let me know the next time you're in Cork.
Thank you so much, Jack. Have a wonderful afternoon.
You too, dude.